failure is rarely what it appears to be at first glance. In the context of investing, entrepreneurship, or personal finance, it is not the opposite of success. It is the mechanism through which understanding and skill are refined. I have observed repeatedly that the most successful individuals, whether managing multi-million-dollar portfolios or launching innovative startups, often trace their early breakthroughs back to moments of significant failure. These are not just anecdotal exceptions. They are consistent patterns. The critical point is to recognize failure as feedback rather than defeat. When approached with this mindset, failure does not signal the end of an opportunity. It signals the start of a learning process. This perspective allows for smarter pivots in future decisions and lays the groundwork for resilience, the kind of resilience that separates those who survive financial challenges from those who thrive through them. Experiencing failure brings to light the gaps in our knowledge, the cracks in planning, and the weaknesses in execution that otherwise remain invisible. Imagine an investor who enters a trade without adequate risk assessment and loses a substantial portion of capital. The initial reaction is often shock or regret, but the real value emerges in the analysis afterward. Why did the position fail? Was it a misreading of market trends, a miscalculation of risk, or an emotional reaction to short-term volatility? By examining the decisions that led to the loss, the investor uncovers patterns in their behavior and identifies blind spots that could compromise future performance. This process is not theoretical, it is intensely practical. Each failure exposes a lesson that, if internalized, makes subsequent decisions more calculated, disciplined, and less reactive. Emotional detachment from the mistake, while difficult at first, transforms setbacks into strategic knowledge. Concrete examples illuminate how failure serves as a catalyst for growth. Consider the entrepreneur whose first business collapses due to inadequate cash flow planning. On paper, the loss is devastating, and the instinctive reaction might be to retreat from further risk. But a careful review reveals the structural mistakes, underestimated expenses, over-reliance on a single revenue stream, and poor contingency planning. Armed with this information, the entrepreneur approaches the next venture with a clear blueprint for avoiding the same pitfalls. The insight gained through failure surpasses what textbooks or advisory guides can offer. Practical experience, painful as it may be, provides lessons that theoretical knowledge rarely conveys. This cycle of trial, error, and adjustment becomes the foundation for sustainable financial acumen and entrepreneurial skill. The emotional dimensions of failure cannot be overstated. Losses in money, business, or investment carry an inherent psychological weight. Disappointment, fear, and frustration are natural reactions, but they are not obstacles. They are indicators. These feelings highlight areas where preparation, judgment, or discipline is lacking. Learning to confront and manage these emotions builds a level of mental toughness that becomes invaluable over the long term. The ability to remain composed when facing financial volatility or unexpected setbacks allows for more rational decision-making and reduces the likelihood of impulsive actions that compound losses. Emotional resilience and financial skill are not separate competencies. They are interdependent. Adaptability is the next essential lesson that failure delivers. In both investing and business, rigid adherence to a failing strategy often compounds losses rather than mitigating them. Markets change, customer preferences evolve, and unforeseen external factors emerge with regularity. Those who cannot adjust in response to these variables find themselves trapped by circumstances they could have navigated with foresight. Conversely, individuals willing to examine a failure, extract lessons, and adjust their approach turn setbacks into actionable intelligence. A strategy that does not work today may be successful tomorrow when paired with new insights and disciplined execution. Flexibility is therefore not optional. It is integral to converting failure into advantage. Ultimately, the first failure represents a critical learning event, a turning point that shapes future decisions. It reveals gaps in knowledge, strengthens emotional resilience, and emphasizes the need for strategic adaptability. In personal finance, this means understanding where risk is mismanaged and learning to implement systems that prevent repeat mistakes. In investing, it means cultivating the patience and analytical skill to respond to market volatility without succumbing to emotion. In business, it involves recognizing structural weaknesses and making iterative improvements. Failure is the foundation upon which informed, disciplined, and ultimately successful financial strategies are built. By reframing failure as an essential part of the learning process, the apparent setback transforms into a resource. It is a source of insight, a teacher of resilience, and a guide toward more deliberate, informed decision-making. What initially feels like loss becomes the most practical form of education available in finance and business. Those who embrace this perspective do not merely recover from failure, they leverage it. And it is this leverage, earned through experience, that separates reactive participants in financial markets and business ventures from those who systematically thrive. Building on the lessons drawn from initial failure, the next phase is to develop a systematic method for learning from setbacks. It is not enough to endure a loss or experience a failed venture. The value lies in dissecting the experience with precision. This process begins by identifying what factors were within your control and which were external variables beyond your influence, such as market volatility, regulatory changes, or unexpected shifts in consumer behavior. Separating these elements allows the emotional weight of failure to transform into actionable knowledge. Rather than letting regret or frustration dictate future choices, you create a framework for evaluating your decisions objectively. Over time, this systematic approach reduces the likelihood of repeated mistakes, creating a structured feedback loop that informs every subsequent move in your financial or entrepreneurial life. Applying this analytical lens to financial decisions is a critical step in refining strategy. For example, an investor who loses capital in a volatile market must go beyond simply labeling the trade a mistake. They examine position sizing, diversification, entry and exit points, and their own psychological response to market swings. Implementing stricter risk management rules or rebalancing a portfolio in light of these insights reduces exposure to unnecessary risk in the future. The same principle applies across investment vehicles. Whether stocks, bonds, or real estate, careful post-mortem analysis turns prior losses into a roadmap for more informed, disciplined decision-making. In essence, every misstep becomes a stepping stone toward a more resilient financial strategy. Real-world scenarios reinforce the practical application of these principles. Consider a young entrepreneur who fails to negotiate contracts effectively, resulting in financial loss and operational disruption. Reviewing the experience reveals missed clauses, overlooked contingencies, or underdeveloped negotiation tactics. Applying these lessons, the entrepreneur sharpens legal awareness, refines negotiation skills, and improves risk assessment processes for future deals. Each small adjustment compounds over time, establishing a more sophisticated, confident approach to business decisions. Failure, in this context, is not simply a negative event. It is an experiential teacher, one that imparts skills that formal education or theory often cannot provide. Equally important is the humility that comes from experiencing setbacks. Accepting that mistakes are inevitable is a prerequisite for continuous learning. This humility drives a commitment to deeper research, the seeking of mentorship from experienced professionals, and the adoption of proven best practices. Over time, these incremental improvements accumulate, creating a compounding effect on knowledge and capability. A single lesson learned from failure is valuable, but the cumulative impact of repeated reflection and adjustment becomes transformative. Expertise in finance, investing, and business is rarely the result of immediate success. It is the product of repeated cycles of trial, failure, and deliberate improvement. Another critical insight lies in perspective. Framing failure as a temporary setback rather than permanent damage encourages calculated risk-taking. Those who interpret mistakes as data points rather than final judgments remain willing to seize opportunities that others avoid out of fear. In markets and business ventures, the difference between a participant who hesitates and one who acts decisively often determines long-term advantage. Viewing failure as feedback rather than a verdict fosters a mindset where risk is evaluated rationally and strategically, not emotionally. This perspective transforms what could have been an endpoint into a gateway for new growth and opportunity. Ultimately, treating failure as a feedback mechanism allows you to convert setbacks into actionable growth strategies. The process is cyclical. Observe the failure, analyze contributing factors, extract lessons, adjust strategy, and implement changes. With each iteration, decisions become sharper, risks more controlled, and performance more predictable. What begins as a painful loss evolves into a tool for refinement, enhancing both financial outcomes and personal judgment. By committing to this disciplined approach, initial setbacks are no longer setbacks at all. They are investments in experience, competence, and long-term success. Once failure is fully internalized as a learning mechanism, it stops being a source of fear and becomes a strategic advantage. The shift in perspective is subtle but profound. Instead of approaching investing, business, or money management with hesitation, you begin to operate with calculated confidence. This confidence is not arrogance. It is rooted in the knowledge that each misstep provides insight that can be leveraged in the next decision. Understanding the lessons embedded in failure allows you to navigate complex financial landscapes with clarity and composure. Calculated confidence arises from experience, reflection, and the systematic integration of knowledge gained from setbacks, and it forms the foundation for consistent, informed decision-making. Structured reflection is the tool that ensures these lessons are captured and applied effectively. Without documentation and deliberate analysis, the value of failure diminishes over time. For instance, an investor who keeps a detailed journal of mistakes, strategies, and outcomes creates a roadmap for future decisions. Each recorded observation becomes a reference point, reducing the likelihood of repeating prior errors and enabling more precise strategic planning. This habit transforms failures from isolated events into a compounding source of intelligence. Over time, the accumulation of these insights forms a framework that informs every investment choice, business decision, and financial strategy with greater precision and foresight. The pattern of early failure followed by strategic adjustment is common among successful individuals. Entrepreneurs who went bankrupt in their first venture often go on to build scalable, profitable businesses. The difference lies not in avoiding mistakes, but in extracting actionable lessons and applying them deliberately in subsequent endeavors. Each failure becomes an opportunity to refine processes, improve decision-making, and strengthen risk management practices. This iterative approach demonstrates the tangible value of setbacks as catalysts for growth rather than endpoints. Those who harness failure strategically transform initial losses into long-term advantage, building expertise that is both practical and resilient. The concept of compounding knowledge further amplifies the benefits of learning from failure. Each misstep teaches multiple lessons simultaneously: risk management, decision-making under pressure, and the importance of strategic adaptation. Unlike linear learning, where one lesson follows another, the insights gained from failure overlap and reinforce one another, accelerating personal and financial growth. This cumulative effect magnifies over time, producing outcomes that far exceed what initial success alone could achieve. In finance and entrepreneurship, where compounded advantages accumulate rapidly, this approach provides a measurable edge over competitors who fail to learn from their experiences. Beyond knowledge, there is a psychological advantage to learning from failure. Individuals who experience setbacks and reflect systematically develop resilience, patience, and confidence. They are less likely to panic during market volatility, unexpected losses, or operational challenges. This mental fortitude supports disciplined decision-making, reinforces consistency, and reduces the likelihood of impulsive reactions that erode long-term wealth. Psychological resilience, combined with analytical insight, becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The more failures you learn from, the better you navigate uncertainty, and the more confident you become in your ability to manage risk. In conclusion, the first failure is not simply a moment of loss. It is a transformative event that, when approached strategically, becomes one of the greatest advantages in personal finance and business. By reframing failure as feedback, analyzing outcomes methodically, and applying the lessons learned, you cultivate expertise, emotional resilience, and a mindset capable of turning setbacks into stepping stones for success. Each failure becomes a building block in a structure of knowledge, skill, and confidence that compounds over time. The capacity to internalize, adapt, and leverage these experiences distinguishes those who achieve lasting financial success from those who are paralyzed by fear or indecision. Ultimately, failure is not the end of a journey. It is the critical beginning of a more informed, disciplined, and strategic path toward financial mastery. Understanding the power of failure is not just a mindset. It is a practical strategy for long-term financial success. Every misstep you encounter is an opportunity to learn, adapt, and grow smarter in your investments, business decisions, and money management. If you found value in this perspective, consider sharing your own experiences with failure in the comments below. What lessons have shaped your financial decisions the most? Your insights might help someone else navigate their own setbacks. And if you want to continue building a mindset that turns mistakes into stepping stones for wealth, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We dive deep into finance, investing strategies, and money psychology that aren't just theoretical. They are tested through real-world experience. Remember, failure is not the end of the story. It is the start of the advantage that sets you apart. Stay disciplined, stay reflective, and keep turning every setback into a step forward.